The ribeye cooled on the plate in front of me. Medium rare, the way I like it. The way Emily used to order it for me before she started calling me predictable. A table for 7. 7 polished glasses. 7 folded napkins. 7 places set with care at my favorite steakhouse, tucked in the back by the fireplace, the same spot where we had celebrated birthdays and anniversaries for more than 20 years. Not a single chair was taken. Not by my wife, Emily, who texted that morning to say she had a crushing migraine and might have to lie down for the rest of the day. Not by my daughter, Madison, who replied, sorry, Dad. A last-minute thing came up with Ashley. I love you. Not by my son, Jacob, who never replied at all. My brother, Mike, left me on read. My best friend, Dave, with 30 years of shared cigars and road trips, said nothing. Here is something no one tells you about turning 59. The loudest sound at your birthday dinner can be the empty space where people used to sit and swear they would always have your back. They did not just flake. They planned it. I was not dining alone by accident. I did not flinch. Not once. I had known for months about the affair, about the siphoned money, about the family group chat where I was the punchline. I kept my mouth shut. I let it roll. I watched them stack their cards while I quietly reshuffled the entire deck. You do not answer betrayal by shouting. You answer it by planning. Right around the time my steak reached room temperature, the waiter came over with a note. No envelope, just a folded square of stiff card. He held it like it was cursed. Someone asked me to give you this, sir. I opened it. 3 words in a jagged hand I knew right away. Check your phone. No signature. No flourish. I knew exactly who sent it. I drew a breath, took a sip of wine, and picked up my phone. The screen lit with one message from one name. Robert, my father-in-law, a retired corporate litigator. This is the same man who once told me on a fishing trip, "You are the only reason this family is not a tabloid scandal." He never defended me in public, but he watched, and now he was scared. His message read, I just got the alert from the trust law firm. Call me before you destroy this entire family. So they had received it. The formal trigger notice. The beginning. People think family dinners are about connection. Sometimes they are just a show. When the cast walks off stage without you, they forget you might own the rights to the entire script. I did not respond. I turned the phone face down on the linen. The table stayed empty. The steak grew cold. The waiter passed by twice, hesitated, and kept moving. He wanted to ask if I was all right. I wanted to ask if betrayal ever stops stinging after the 10th or 11th time. Instead, I leaned back, folded the note, and slid it into my blazer pocket, right beside the copy of Clause 14C from the Walker Family Trust Charter. The clause had been dormant since 1954. Everyone forgot it existed. I had quietly reactivated it 37 hours earlier. Let them enjoy their whispers, their smug looks, their private messages, thinking I was too old, too tired, too slow to notice. I did not just notice. I documented. The dinner was ending. The reckoning was starting. The phone buzzed. The message hovered on the lock screen like a gun being cocked somewhere out in the dark. One line. No emojis. No pleasantries. I just got the alert from the trust law firm. Call me before you destroy this entire family. The tone was all wrong. No greeting. No hello, Jack. No, let us talk this through. Just panic. Raw and clumsy from a man who once argued multi-million-dollar mergers with a voice like polished granite. I did not move. I looked at those glowing words, tapped the screen dark, and set the phone face down beside my wine glass. It was done. The notice had been delivered. That meant Ms. Carter at the trust firm had started phase 2 of the displacement. That meant every name on the secondary beneficiary tier, my wife, my children, my brother, and yes, even my lifelong best friend, had just received a digital notice informing them of pending trust action due to coordinated misconduct against the primary beneficiary. That was the phrase Ms. Carter insisted on using, coordinated misconduct. It sounded like something from a corporate human resources handbook, but it would feel like an earthquake in their small world of collusion. Robert was not part of the betrayal. Not directly. But I had not forgotten the summer of 2019, when I watched him pretend not to notice a suspicious tax document that accidentally showed up at the family lake house, and then quietly pocketed anyway. It was a document that would have tipped me off to my wife's side account, $3,000 a week flowing into consulting retainers that did not exist. Robert did not say a word. He folded the paper, fed it to the fire, and poured another glass of scotch. "You are better off not knowing," he muttered. "Some things you just let slide." I nodded back then, not because I agreed, but because I was filing that moment in the deep vault where I keep my long games. Now, that vault was open. His text was not only a warning. It was a confession. It admitted that what they thought was not safe at all. With MS. Carter's help, I had combed through the charter myself. Every clause, every footnote, every hard-edged little lesson my Great Depression era grandfather had baked into the Walker family trust. Clause 14C. That was the hidden pin, wrapped in dusty language everyone assumed could not be enforced. In plain terms, it said that if the primary beneficiary suffered an organized breach by family members, with proof of concealment, that beneficiary could move to displace the secondary tiers after an independent review. It took 9 months to collect the proof, 6 weeks to assemble the review, 3 days for the firm's ethics board to sign off. Now the emails were sent, the accounts were frozen, and the legal noose was tightening. Robert, the steady, dry, practical man he had always been, was finally rattled. He was not calling because he cared about me. He was calling because the animal he once thought was tame had shown its teeth. I took a slow drink of wine. I still had not touched the steak. I watched the dining room. Soft light, easy talk, forks tapping plates. Nobody noticed the man in the corner who had just kicked a leg out from under a legacy. Robert's first message was followed by a second. "I warned her not to involve your brother. That was a mistake." I let that sit. A third arrived. "Please, let us meet. I will come to you." I almost smiled. The man who once joked that I made a fine beta to his daughter's alpha wanted an audience. For what? To bargain with decades of complicity? I swiped up, copied the messages, and forwarded them to Ms. Carter with one instruction: log under secondary party panic response. The trust requires that we document attempts to interfere once the trigger protocols are live. I was not ignoring him. I was filing him with the rest. Let them squirm. Let them threaten. Let them put on a show. I was not destroying the family. I was centering it again, around truth, around legacy, around the one person they all misjudged. The man at the head of an empty table who let their silence speak for them. People in the family used to whisper about the Walker family trust like it was a ghost story. They called it the old man's Bible. Pages of typewritten rules buried in mahogany drawers and locked cabinets. Established in 1946. Restructured twice in the 1970s. Digitally archived in 2003 after a scare with mold. I knew it better than any of them. Not because I had to, but because while they laughed about my golden retriever loyalty behind my back, I was reading, memorizing, and preparing. My grandfather, Everett Walker, was not only shrewd. He was paranoid. He watched 2 of his brothers wreck a family shipping business during the Great Depression with lies, theft, and petty wars. He swore no Walker would ever burn down the house again without the fire turning back on them. So he built the trust not as a gift, but as a minefield. You could walk it, you could benefit from it, but if you misstepped, it would go off. Clause 14C was one of the tripwires. Most of the family figured it was symbolic, a relic from a time when betrayal wore suits and ties, not direct messages and encrypted group chats. But Clause 14C was real, and it was live. I had reread it hundreds of times this past year. If the primary beneficiary endures coordinated harm from kin, that beneficiary may activate discretionary displacement upon corroborated evidence and approval by the governing ethics panel. It sounded ceremonial until you understood the teeth. It meant if you were betrayed, and you could prove it, financially, relationally, legally, you could reset the board, strip voting rights, suspend inheritances, freeze properties, cancel stipends, even revoke access to family resources under fiduciary claim. There was one requirement. It had to be coordinated. And they made that part easy. There were photos of Emily and Dave in the back seat of a black sport utility vehicle after a conference in Chicago. There was Mike's signature on the limited liability company paperwork tied to a shell consulting outfit Emily used to pull $180,000 out of a shared investment account. There were my kids' joint home rental bookings timed to match her wellness retreats, all paid through accounts labeled as mental health disbursements. I did not shout. I did not throw a fit. I documented. And now the mechanism my grandfather designed for days like this was doing exactly what it was built to do. I had hired no private investigator. I did not need one. They were lazy, entitled, and careless. Every invoice, every email, every transfer of money, screen captured, notarized, and sorted by Ms. Carter's legal team with unsettling efficiency. At 7:46 that morning, I authorized submission. Not a speech, not a showdown, just a quiet checkmark on a digital form labeled, "Proceed with displacement." By 9:15, the official notices had gone out. The software sent each person a formal trust alert. You are receiving this notice due to a pending fiduciary review regarding your status as a secondary beneficiary. A hold has been placed on all distributions pending further determination. No details, no warm-up, just clean, exact language. The same people who ignored my birthday text now received something far colder. By noon, two of them, my son and my brother, had already tried to call me. I let the calls ring. The Walker Family Trust was not my revenge. It was my shield. My grandfather built it for a future Walker who might find himself surrounded by smiling traitors and have no idea whom to trust. Now it was doing exactly what he designed it to do: protect the legacy, not the noise, not the showmanship, not the ones who performed family while poisoning it behind the curtain. Just the one who stayed quiet long enough to let them finish burying themselves, then calmly turned on the light. Clause 14C had slept for decades. Now it was awake, and it did not blink. 3 days before the dinner, before the empty chairs and the shaking voicemails, I sat under recessed lights in an office that smelled like lavender disinfectant and old hardwood. Across from me sat Ms. Elaine Carter, Senior Trust Administrator at Carrington & Steele, one of the most discreet legacy firms in the state. She was small, silver-haired, and wore glasses so narrow they looked like punctuation marks resting on her nose. Her voice was even and almost soothing, as if she were reading a bedtime story and not setting financial exile in motion. Between us lay a navy leather portfolio, its brass corners still cool from the morning air. Inside were pages and pages of hard proof, bank transfers that should not exist, security footage from the Vermont cabin, clear as day, showing my wife stepping in with my brother only hours after they claimed to be at separate conferences, a notarized witness statement from a family office employee who overheard my daughter mocking my gullibility during a call with her mother. The witness even transcribed the laughter. "He is still trying to plan a surprise birthday like some sad puppy," Madison had said. "It is pathetic." Ms. Carter turned a page and angled it toward me. "Reallocation of joint property equity from shared to sole ownership executed by your wife last month," she said, tapping the line. "Filed with incomplete spousal disclosure. Is that your signature?" Yes. It was not. It was a hurried scrawl. The J did not even curve correctly, likely copied from an old lease. I shook my head. "Ms. Carter nodded, as if she expected that answer, and brought up a digital dashboard. 7 names appeared, the secondary beneficiaries. In the view of the Ethics Committee, based on documented evidence and review, all 7 parties have breached their fiduciary or moral obligations," she said. "Would you like to initiate full displacement?" I did not speak for several seconds. It was not hesitation. I simply wanted to feel the moment, the clean weight of a door closing. I nodded once. "Yes, full displacement." Ms. Carter did not flinch. She tapped her screen. A small chime sounded. "The next board cycle will reflect these changes," she said, outlining them one by one, like a surgeon explaining a standard extraction. "The family's 14% ownership stake in Walker Freight and Logistics will be rekeyed, with you assuming 100% of the trust's voting shares. Your brother, formerly listed as proxy, is removed. A Cape Cod property currently occupied by your son and his girlfriend is frozen immediately under asset review. Occupancy rights are suspended. The European travel stipends formerly granted to your daughter and her art collective partner are terminated. Reimbursements for prior travel exceeding budget are now retroactively disputed. A private education fund originally intended for future grandchildren is placed under restricted lock status. Any use now requires unanimous board approval, which no longer exists." She recited each item the way a librarian might announce late fees. No malice, no pleasure, just procedure. I did not react. I listened and breathed slowly. She paused and folded her hands. "Mr. Walker, I am required to ask whether you would like us to offer the displaced parties an explanatory review meeting." I looked up. "To what end?" "Closure. Or perhaps reconciliation. I almost laughed, but did not. I shook my head. They did not offer me closure when they decided to write me out of my own family. Ms. Carter made a small note. Very well. Review offer declined. Documentation noted. Ms. Carter slid open a drawer and pushed a sealed envelope across the table. These are your formal trustee reassignment documents. They will be countersigned and filed with the Secretary of State by morning. You will serve as the sole active beneficiary until a new secondary list is established. I looked at that envelope the way a man accepts a folded flag. I had not wanted any of this. They earned it. Every fake excuse. Every half-hidden smirk. Every empty chair. This was not a tantrum. This was architecture. Because I knew something they forgot. Legacy is not built in public. It is defended in quiet. And I would take it back the same way I had lived. Not by shouting, not by slamming doors, just one steady signature at a time. My brother, Mike, always loved to pose as the guardian of the family legacy. He said it at the last board retreat, after too much whiskey and a speech nobody requested. We are the stewards of Granddad's vision, he said, half slurring, fully smug. And Jack, well, you have always been the heart. But I am the spine. I remember forcing a polite smile. The spine, right? The same spine that folded like a paperclip when our sister-in-law flirted with a real estate developer in Naples. The same spine that twisted when our father died and the estate got sliced up behind closed doors. The same spine that helped my wife slide property titles under the table in exchange for consulting credit. The thing about Mike is he never reads. Not really. He signs. He nods. He coasts through board meetings with phrases like quarterly leverage delta and legacy liquidity. But he does not read the fine print. I do. Buried deep in the charter, written in post-war legalese so stiff it could have been Latin, sat Clause 10a. The meaning was simple. If a sibling co-trustee knowingly works with outside parties to hide, redirect, or otherwise compromise shared assets, the primary beneficiary can revoke that trustee's voting rights by submitting evidence to the governance administrator and notifying the Secretary of State. No theatrics. No debate. One form and a notarized statement. I filed both 2 days after my meeting with Ms. Carter. I did not call Mike. I did not threaten him. I did not ask why he helped Emily trace my initials onto the Vermont land refinance papers. I already knew why. He resented being the younger brother. He resented not having the controlling share. He resented having to ask for approval on every capital disbursement. Instead of building something on his own, he orbited me, pretending to protect what he was quietly looting. By Wednesday morning, a digital notice landed with the board of Walker Freight and Logistics. Change of trustee authority. Jack Walker, sole voting rights, effective immediately. Attached was the state filing, clean, verified, stamped. The system accepted it without question because it was airtight. No dramatic expulsion. No press release. Just a clean deletion. At 11:43 in the morning, Mike texted, "Hey, did you change something on the board app? I am not seeing the vote menu." I answered, "You are no longer a voting trustee. See Clause 10a. Silence for 3 minutes. Then, wait, what are you doing?" I did not respond. I forwarded the exchange to Ms. Carter for the log and walked into my study, where the original trust charter sits on a walnut shelf bound in green leather, edges gilded like a church Bible. I pulled it down and turned straight to 10a. I ran my finger over the margin where my grandfather penciled a note decades ago. No one is immune. Not even blood. As a boy, I did not understand it. Tonight, it felt like a scalpel. When Mike finally called, sputtering, raging, trying to sound shocked, the call went to voicemail. I had already issued a new internal protocol at the logistics firm. All board communication must go through legal, no exceptions. That night, I sat by the fireplace with a tumbler of rye and watched the flames move. My brother had not only betrayed me, he tested me, and he failed. There was no outburst, no brawl. Just a quiet filing logged at the Secretary of State's office at 2:14 in the afternoon. A signature, a submission, then silence. Authority does not scream. It signs. They called me Dad when the checks cleared, and something colder when the group chat turned sour. I knew it. I had scrolled the screenshots, forwarded by an intern from my daughter's old startup. The one I funded for $250,000 to build a sustainable jewelry line that became one pop-up event and 6 months of social media storytelling. The intern quit after 2 weeks and emailed me the archive out of guilt. You deserve to know, she wrote. I did not answer. I saved the files. Let him sit alone like the martyr he loves to be, my son had typed. It is not our job to protect his ego, my daughter added. He wants us to grovel so he can feel powerful. Forget that. He is not the only walker who matters. They thought it was harmless venting, just private steam. What they never learned, what none of them bothered to learn, is that the trust is not only a pipeline. It is a fortress, and it has rules. Clause 22D lives under the disbursement conditions header, 2 pages after a healthcare compliance note, and just before the clause on charitable overrides. Dry, almost boring language. Deliberate alienation or abandonment of the primary beneficiary during periods of documented emotional duress shall result in immediate deferment of all pending or scheduled disbursements to involved secondary parties. Duration of deferment shall be undefined until reassessment. Plain English. If you abandon your father when he needs you, there is no inheritance schedule, and there are no appeals. On the Monday after the dinner, they received the emails. Each message was addressed to them directly and sent from the secure server at Carrington and Steele. Subject line: Change in disbursement status, Walker Family Trust. Dear, first name. This is to inform you that, based on a recent ethics panel review, your standing as a secondary beneficiary under the Walker Family Trust has been reclassified as under temporary deferment. This action has been taken under Clause 22D due to behavior inconsistent with beneficiary obligations. All future inheritance draws are suspended pending full reassessment. No apology, no warmth, just clean legal air. Madison did not wait. She called within minutes and left a voicemail, shouting, "You are doing this because I did not show up to your dinner, because I did not want to pretend everything was fine." She did not mention the burner Venmo account she used to send her mother money while telling me she was broke. She did not mention the group vacation she planned with her mother and Uncle Mike under the label Wellness Retreat. She only mentioned the money. Jacob did not shout. He texted, "We can fix this. I will talk to her." Well, I will talk to you. Let us not do anything permanent. Permanent. The only permanent thing here was the fracture. The problem was not a mistake. The problem was a decision. They chose to believe the worst version of me, the story their mother spun while pressing her own guilt flat and calling it pain. She is hurting too, Jacob told me once. Maybe, but she did not hurt when she drained the emergency savings account and changed the Roth individual retirement account beneficiary to her new limited liability company. She did not hurt when she stood in front of the mirror and rehearsed how to convince our children that I was manipulative and needy. That rehearsal was in the intern's screenshots, too. The truth is, my children are adults. Adults make choices. Now they will live with them. I did not call back. I did not text. I did not warn. I let the clause speak for me. The firm logged their reactions, as required. Madison filed an urgent inquiry with the fund administrator. Denied. Jacob emailed the estate attorney and asked to carbon copy their mother. No reply. Because the pause in disbursements is not only policy. It is prophecy. It was written by a man who survived his own family turning on him and swore that his descendants would never be powerless in the face of betrayal. I finally understood him. This is not punishment. It is precedent. If you teach your children that love guarantees inheritance regardless of how they treat you, you hand them a sword and rest your neck on the block. So I did not reply. I poured a glass of bourbon, walked out to the garden I planted with my own hands, and let the silence settle like armor. Let them rage. I had nothing left to give except the lesson they were sure I would never teach. She was stepping out of a midday facial when the process server approached her Range Rover and asked her name with that measured politeness that says, "This is not a package." She did not even buckle her seat belt before the envelope landed in her lap. It was not a divorce petition. She might have expected that. This was worse. The cover page was dry. The second paragraph made her hands shake. Legal challenge to co-signature authority due to fiduciary misrepresentation and concealed financial partnership. In other words, you are being cut out of every account you believed you controlled. I did not bother with theatrics. There was no scene, no shouting across a table, just a clean filing, served at midday on a Friday, right when her attorney was out of the office and the courts would not open again until Monday. Attached to the notice was an 8-page timeline. Chronological, meticulous, clinical. It ended with one deliberate line that turned the whole packet into a blade. April 14th. Subject declined invitation to spouse's birthday dinner without notification. Coordinated absence corroborated by 6 additional named parties. Breach indicates intent to cause emotional and reputational harm to the primary beneficiary. She read that line twice. Then a third time. That was when it landed. The dinner was not a forgotten social obligation. It was the final domino. The trigger I needed to reframe everything, not as a messy family squabble, but as coordinated, legally actionable sabotage. That single entry made the betrayal read like intent. Suddenly the eye rolls, the "we just did not feel like pretending" attitude, and the whispering looked like evidence. Evidence reviewed by counsel, stamped by the trust ethics panel, and docketed with a judge. When her attorney finally called her back late that night, he skimmed the packet and said nothing for 10 seconds. Then he asked, "Did you know he was documenting all of this?" She whispered no, because she had not known. None of them had. The timeline cited my location logs that placed me at 3 sites where she claimed I had never been. It listed account access attempts from her devices at hours she swore she was asleep. It included shared airdrop metadata tying her to photographs, images of her with Dave, my oldest friend, the same photographs she swore did not exist. Then came the bomb. A concealed financial partnership filed 3 months ago. A limited liability company registered in Wyoming. Her name on it beside Mike's. She had forgotten that one. Mike told her it was a small tax formality. She never imagined I would find it, much less use it. Now it sat in black and white, cited as proof of an undisclosed partnership executed without required disclosure to the primary beneficiary. She scrambled. Called Mike. Voicemail. Tried Madison. No answer. Texted Jacob. Did Dad really do this? Nothing. By then they had all seen it, and they knew this was no bluff. I had filed before she was served. The firm had already executed the co-signature freeze across 5 banks and 2 brokerage houses. Her name was flagged. Transactions halted. Access pending review. The language in the filings was not soft. Phrases like malicious coordination, intent to defraud, covert withdrawal, and premeditated asset redirection framed her not as a wounded spouse, but as a hostile actor, a risk to the trust. Her lawyer tried to pivot. We will respond Monday. We will say you were under emotional distress. We will call it a miscommunication. We will deny intent. Even as he said it, the doubt bled through. You can argue feelings. You cannot argue a timeline, especially not one that ends with 7 empty chairs and a note that says, "Check your phone." She poured a glass of wine. Her hand shook. This was not only a legal maneuver. It was a mirror, held up by the man she thought was too soft to push back. Now she saw herself the way the record showed her. Premeditated harm. Documented. Submitted. Already accepted by the court. The phone rang at 6:18 in the morning, just as the first light came through the old shutters in my den. I let it buzz 3 times and answered. No greeting. Just silence. Then the low, gravel-dark voice of the man who used to toast me with bourbon and call me son, like he meant it. "You did not need to go this far," Robert said. I exhaled once, steady. "You raised her," I said. "You knew what she was capable of. You just did not care until it turned back on you." A pause. The soft rustle of paper. Or maybe hands shaking. Robert was the sort who never lost balance in a meeting, in a courtroom, or at a crowded holiday table. He carried that coiled calm, like a wolf in a grandfather's sweater. Today, the mask slipped. "They will be ruined," he said too quickly. "The board, the foundation, even her consulting licenses. They should not have gambled with my silence," I said, even and surgical. That landed. I heard a quick breath, sharp and uneven, then the faint click of a lighter. I could picture him pacing in his home office, the old leather chair spinning behind him, a folder half open on the desk with red tabs that were not there yesterday. "I advised her not to freeze the individual retirement account," he said. "I told her it would trigger scrutiny." I said nothing. "She told me you would never notice," he added, softer. "That you never asked about money." I chuckled, without humor. "I did not ask because I already knew. I just wanted to see how far she would take it before you stepped in," I said. The silence on the line grew heavier. "Jesus Christ, Jack," Robert muttered. "This is not damage control anymore. You have started a fire." "No," I said. "I am just refusing to sweep up their ashes anymore." Another pause. You think this will not touch you? I looked up at a framed photo on the shelf. Our wedding day. Robert beside me, one hand on my shoulder, the other holding a drink. The grin was tight. The grip was tighter. It already did, I said. That is why it ends here. There was a long quiet, different this time. The kind of pause that shows a man has run out of leverage and has only legacy left to lose. You could have come to me, Robert said at last. We could have fixed it privately. I closed my eyes for a moment and felt the weight in those words. Years of looking the other way, those old ideas about keeping things discreet and handling it like men. Then I opened them. I tried quiet, I said. For 20 years, I tried quiet. You all mistook it for weakness. She is my daughter, he said. She is a grown woman, I answered. And she will face grown consequences. You are hurting your own name. He pressed, reaching for the last arrow in his quiver. The Walker name means something. Institutions. Foundations. You do not just burn that down. I am not burning it down, I said, cool as ice. I am burning you out of it. That did it. He fell silent again. Not strategic. Not superior. Small. Like a man who suddenly sees the board flipped. I waited a beat. Tell Mike to stop leaving voicemails, I added. I am not interested in his version either. Robert did not argue. He just said, quietly, you are not the same man I used to know. No, I said. You never knew me. You just assumed I would never wake up. I ended the call. No slam. No parting shot. Just a click. I set the phone down, stood up, and walked to the window. The sun had cleared the trees. Light spilled across the shelves, the rug, the old oak desk. I watched it for a while. There was no going back. There was no one left to call. At 8:02 on Sunday night, the email went out. No leaks. No rumors. Just a clinical subject line dropping into the inboxes of more than 300 stakeholders, donors, corporate partners, and institutional liaisons tied to the Walker Family Trust. Subject, Walker Family Trust, formal update on governance changes. No emojis. No branding. A portable document format file attached. One short paragraph in the body. Please find enclosed a formal summary of governance restructuring and beneficiary status updates as ratified by the Trust's Ethics Panel and approved by the designated legal entities. These changes are effective immediately. Inside the attachment, 6 pages of reshuffling. My name stood alone under primary trustee. Emily, Mike, Madison, Jacob, and Dave, once listed as strategic advisors and legacy stewards, were removed. Their positions were marked, vacated due to breach of ethics protocol under Clause 14C and Clause 22D. 2 foundations had their sponsorships paused. 3 grand initiatives were frozen. Travel stipends, consulting retainers, joint investment privileges, suspended. The final page named 3 new oversight roles, a compliance officer, a governance analyst, and a forensic auditor. Not one of them carried the Walker name. It was a quiet massacre. By Monday morning, the calls began. Not family. Institutions. A former board sponsor, the head of a university endowment attached to a scholarship in Everett Walker's name, resigned on the spot. Another followed within the hour. By noon, the whispers spread. What happened? Why were the names removed? Was there fraud? Infighting? A reporter from a niche philanthropy blog called my assistant. No comment. At 3:15 in the afternoon, my personal phone rang. A departing board member, someone I had shaken hands with more times than I could count, a man who once toasted me as the quiet engine of Walker's stability, did not waste time. They are blaming you, he said. I sat at the long wooden table in the Trust's private conference room, looked out the window, and said, let them. That was it. I did not raise my voice. I did not issue a rebuttal. I did not log on to social media to clear my name. I did not leak a single detail to fight whatever story they were floating in whispers and back channels. For years I had carried their secrets so the family brand could shine, even as it rotted underneath. They wore my grandfather's legacy like a personal logo. But now, it was not emotional. It was institutional. The betrayal started with a dinner. The answer ended in law, governance, structure. I did not need to raise my voice. I let the machinery speak for me. That night, Madison tried to post something vague on her social media story, a black square and a cryptic quote about family betrayal and the corruption of power. It vanished within hours. Not because I made a call, but because Ms. Carter's new governance policy included a rule. Any public commentary from displaced trustees would trigger an additional legal review of prior expenditures. Madison is not foolish. She understood. Mike tried to feed a softened version to a local alumni newsletter. They ignored it. The new oversight team had already sent a simple document to all active partners with frequently asked questions. Every question would be routed through legal. Any unofficial statements would be treated as non-binding and reputationally unverified. In plain English, if you talked, no one was listening. I watched from a distance and kept quiet. No speeches, no statements, no calls. For the first time, their betrayal was not just emotional wreckage. It was professionally irrelevant. They had not only lost perks, they had lost standing. The Walker family trust moved forward, steady and unblinking, recalibrated. I rebuilt it not to lash out, but to preserve what mattered. My grandfather did not draft Clause 14C for temper tantrums. He wrote it for moments like this, times when the only way to defend tomorrow is to subtract yesterday. Subtraction, at last, was complete. The voicemail arrived at 11:39 in the evening, long after the governance update went out, long after the resignations. Only hours before the first financial freezes would post across 5 personal and joint accounts. I was in the den, reading an old hardback I had not touched in years, when the screen lit up. Her name was still in my favorites. Not out of affection, because some battles are best watched from the front row. I let it roll to voicemail. Seconds later, the little red dot appeared. I stared at it, then pressed play. Her voice was nothing like the one that used to throw birthday parties, plan long weekends, and whisper about early retirement in the Florida Keys. Now it shook, thin with panic and, worse, regret pretending to be concerned. "You have taken everything," she began, already half out of breath. They are panicking. The kids do not know what to do. Mike is threatening some kind of press statement, and my father, he is threatening lawsuits. It is spiraling. "Jack, please just talk to me. Just tell me what you want." She stopped there, as if I might pick up in real time. Then, softer. "You were never supposed to do this. I did not think you would. I did not think you could." Click. End of message. No apology. No admission. Only damage control. With a steady hand, I saved the message, opened my encrypted email, and forwarded the audio file to Ms. Carter with a simple subject line. Potential interference. Archive under Clause 14C, post-trigger activity. No emotion. No note. Procedure only. I stood, stretched, and put on a navy blazer. I did not have a plan. I was not hungry, but some habits are rituals. I drove across town with the windows down. No music, only the tire hum and an October breeze. The steakhouse was still open. Same lot. Same valet. Same soft jazz threading through the doorway. I did not give a name. I did not need to. The host recognized me. A flicker crossed his face, something between guilt and confusion. He looked like he wanted to apologize for last week. "Just a quiet seat," I said. "The same one if it is free." It was. In minutes I was back in the corner booth. Low light. Polished cutlery resting on white linen. I ordered the same meal. Ribeye, medium rare, creamed spinach, double bourbon, neat. No one else came. Of course not. But it did not feel like neglect this time. It felt like clarity. I looked over the empty chairs. One for the daughter who called me controlling. One for the son who called me absent. One for my brother, who never met a knife he would not twist. One for the best friend who mistook my loyalty for leverage. And one for her, the woman who promised forever and then treated patience like weakness. 7 chairs again. Only now the quiet was not hollow. It was earned. There was no wondering. No waiting. The trust had spoken. The legal doors were sealed. The ones who staged their little coup had run out of scripts, explanations, and excuses. They had not simply skipped a dinner. They had tried to take the house. And they lost. I cut into the steak, took a bite, and raised my glass. Not in bitterness, not in victory, but in resolve. There is a difference between being alone and being at peace. Last week, those empty seats mocked me. Tonight, they honored me. The server came by once and asked softly, "May I get you anything else, sir?" I looked up and smiled. "No," I said. "This is perfect."